is Karen Armstrong, who wrote The Great Transformation. Kevin Kelly just wrote a new book called What Technology Wants. And Doug Rushkoff out of NYU has been writing about Renaissance in his recent works. And they all feel we're in sort of this neo-axial age. So we have right now in front of us, I believe, an unprecedented opportunity for anyone to participate in this Renaissance. There's no barriers to entry. Messages are spread globally and instantaneously. No need to speak a language. There's no territorial or geographic limitations. We, I believe, are in unprecedented times.
I said yesterday that I thought most often at universities, at businesses, we're lucky if we can think in 1, 2, or 4-year increments. This conference was an attempt to stretch people to think in a 10 or 20-year span. So are you saying this is bigger than that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about a Renaissance, they usually last for a couple hundred years. They don't just last, it's not like it's felt for a year or 2 years or 10 years or even 100. They usually last for hundreds of years, and their impact is felt for millennia. I mean, we're still fighting about and praying to and meditating on the spirituality, the religion, the philosophies that came out of a period that was 2,000 years ago. So what I encourage people to think of is, what are your messages? Are your messages universal? Who are your disciples? What's your gospel? What is it that you're trying to spread? And is it something, I look at some of the fads today between Britney Spears and Ashton Kutcher and all these people. Are they really the true prophets of today and the messages that we'll be, thinking about 100 years or 1,000 years from now? So what are those things that will last for millennia? The other thing, too, I would say, is that the difference between previous Renaissances and today, the difference is in the past, it was kind of like we wanted to see great works of art, like the Mona Lisa, or go to Italy or to France and see these great works of art. Today, the big difference is we're not content just to see the art. We want to create it. People today, they want their turn at the pulpit. And you see this everywhere. You see it from blogs to podcasts to PDF books to websites and Wikipedia. People really want to create the next great work of art.
In this new world that you see, is there a future for what we traditionally term mainstream media, radio, television, newspapers, magazines? What's going to happen to them?
Well, I think that's a good question, and it sort of revolves around technology. People always ask, what's the next, is podcasting going to last? Is MySpace going to last? Is Facebook going to last? And I try to move back to, it's not about the technology. It's really about a bigger movement. There's a movement from the hands of the control of creation and distribution of content. It's moving from the hands of a few large corporations and into the hands of the people. And that's the real big movement that's going on here. Technology will certainly come and go, but the movement is one of an empowering away from I don't know how you define mainstream media, but to me it's always been sort of constricted control by an elite, whereas now it's unlimited access by the people.
On our panel last hour, there was at least some concern expressed about the noise level of the internet. That, yeah, everybody can create content, but it produces this sort of hodgepodge, if you will, of content that maybe a lot of it is not very good from a quality standpoint. So what do you respond in the media sense?
Yeah, everything is good, but not everything is great. And the wonderful thing about having the ability to create, anybody to create, is everyone's viewpoint can now be expressed. Viewpoints that weren't always deemed appropriate enough to be displayed in corporate media. But yeah, I mean, we need filters. We need, and usually what happens is great ideas spread really fast. Seth Godin is a great proponent of this, saying that if you've got a good idea, if you have a good message, you're probably going to get it linked to, or it's probably going to be viewed an incredible amount of times on YouTube or on Facebook. And some of the great stuff, some of the stuff that's viewed heavily is not always great, but it's entertaining. So there is a challenge. And I would go back to again, instead of people passively receiving others' messages, now we're out creating it. And I think in the long term, the net effect, a billion-year cognitive surplus. And I think that's such an amazing number to think that what people used to do, which was passively watching television, now I think the students in your class already know. Students in your class probably aren't watching television as much. How many students believe they're watching 6 hours of television a day, by a show of hands? Yeah. How many are reading newspapers? How many of you read a newspaper regularly? Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's more the older demographic that's still watching television and still reading newspapers. And I think people our age, Jeremy, we complain about this. I'm actually very excited about it. Now, let's, by a show of hands, how many students use texting on their cell phone? Yeah, how many use Facebook? Twitter? Yeah, I mean, the older demographic is moving away from mainstream media, and the younger demographic I say the older is still in mainstream, but the younger demographic is moving away from this and using what I believe their cognitive surplus is now actually being used to build out networks, to text with their friends, to do social media, and I think that's a positive thing over the long term. We get so nervous that, oh, these kids aren't reading newspapers or watching television, but they're doing some interesting things, and it's not just a judgment. I mean, this is an observation that the advertisers are moving as well. They're moving away from corporate media and towards the social media.
I think that one of the things that stands out to me in your perspective is the idea that we might all be media. What does it mean for this country's small businesses, which often are out there, they can't afford big media advertising budgets, but they want to get their message out?
Yeah, and again, it's funny, I think at a lot of schools that I've been to, Jeremy, they sort of discourage, you know, they're still discouraging, oh, don't bring your cell phones to school, don't bring your laptops into the classroom. You showed me a great video of somebody smashing a laptop. They put it in some chemical solution and they smashed it. But for businesses, for example, I'm a classic example. I need kids who know social media, who know Twitter, who know Facebook, who know YouTube, to help me get my message out. I no longer advertise. I don't advertise at all in traditional media. And I think a lot of businesses are in the same boat. They're not using traditional media. If your demographic, here's a great example. Seth Godin, I interviewed him on my radio show. He's a very famous author and marketer. He didn't, for his new book, which was what he said, he embraced the media crowd. He embraced podcasters, bloggers, YouTubers, you know, all the new media crowd to get the word out about his book. And guess what? Within a couple of days, his book, Lynchpin, was a New York Times bestseller anyway. Why? Well, because all of these people on social media advertised the hell out of his book. And most of those people were sitting in front of a computer. An incredible explosion of human creativity that's been, you know, unprecedented for 2,000 years. And I think the impact will be felt. I think we're going to see a realignment of the powers that be from the few elite into the hands of the media. And I will say I'd like to give a shout out to you for 10-10-10 and for everyone that's participating. You inspired me to create an event on 11-11-11, which is going to benefit the homeless, and it's called Home Aid, just like Live Aid before it, and Farm Aid, which benefits keeping family farmers out of foreclosure. We're going to try and help the homeless and keep people in their homes.
And is that going to be a virtual event or located somewhere? What are the details of that?
Yeah, a combination. It's mostly virtual because we want it to be as carbon neutral as possible, but we're also we're trying to co-locate from a number of places that have been affected by catastrophic events, such as Nashville, which was devastated by some flooding last year, as well as Katrina in New Orleans.
David, thank you so much for taking some time with us this morning.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everybody.